Squeak, squeak, squeak! Welcome back to Mouse Week, the week that I read you stories about mice. And we have been reading The Mouse and the Motorcycle. So, boys and girls, yesterday was very, very long. Thank you for sticking with it. I'm only going to read one chapter today because it ran a little bit long, even for me yesterday. So, I think instead of reading two chapters a day, I'm going to read you one chapter. Look at it like this. The story will last a little bit longer. So where did we leave off? We read chapter 1 and 2. And in chapter 1, the boy and his parents came to an old hotel. They were traveling around the country, and the boy put his toys out before he went to dinner. In chapter 2, Ralph, the little mouse here, found his motorcycle and thought that this motorcycle was very, very cool. And even though his mother did not want him to, he started riding it around the top of the bedside table when suddenly the phone rang and it scared him so much he got knocked off the table and into the wastebasket. So that, boys and girls, is where we are going to pick up. This is chapter 3 of The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. Chapter 3 is called Trapped. Even though Ralph woke up feeling sick and dizzy, his first thought was of the motorcycle. He hoped it was not broken. He sat there at the bottom of the wastebasket until the whirly feeling in his head stopped and he was able, slowly and carefully, to stand up. He stretched each aching muscle and felt each of his 4 legs to make certain they were not broken. When Ralph was sure that he was battered but intact, he examined the motorcycle. He set it upright and rolled it backward and forward to make sure the wheels still worked. One handlebar was bent and some of the paint was chipped off the rear fender, but everything else seemed all right. Ralph hoped so, but there was no way he could find out until he figured out how to start the engine. Now he ached too much to even try. Wearily, Ralph dragged himself over to the wall of his metal prison and sat down beside the apple core to rest his aching body. He leaned back against the side of the wastepaper basket, closed his eyes, and thought about his Uncle Victor. Poor nearsighted Uncle Victor. He too had landed in a metal wastepaper basket by jumping there quite by mistake. Unable to climb the sides, he'd been trapped until the maid came and emptied him out with the trash. No one knew for sure what happened to Uncle Victor, but it was known that trash in the hotel was emptied into an incinerator. Ralph felt sad and remorseful thinking about his Uncle Victor getting dumped out with the trash. His mother had been right after all. His poor mother gathering crumbs for his little brothers and sisters while he, selfish mouse that he was, sat trapped in a metal prison, from which the only escape was to be thrown away like an old gum wrapper. Ralph thought sadly of his comfortable home in the mouse hole. It was a good home, untidy but comfortable. The children who stayed in room 215 usually left a good supply of crumbs behind, and there was always water from the shirts hung to drip dry beside the beside the wash basin. It should have been enough. He should have been content to stay home without venturing into the world looking for speed and excitement. Outside in the hall, Ralph heard footsteps and Matt, the bellboy, saying, "These new people in 215 and 216, somehow they got the idea that there are mice in this hotel. I just opened the window and told them management wouldn't stand for it." Ralph heard a delighted laugh from a second-floor maid, a college girl who was working for the summer season. "Mice are adorable, but just the same, I hope I never find any in my rooms. I'm afraid of them." There are 2 kinds of employees at the Mountain View Inn. The regulars, none of them young, and the summer help, who were college students working during the tourist season. "If you don't like mice, you better stay away from that knothole under the window in room 215, advised Matt. The sound of voices so close made Ralph more eager than ever to escape. "No," he shouted, his voice echoing in the metal chamber. "I won't have it. I'm too young to be dumped out with the trash." In spite of his aches, he jumped to his feet and ran across the wastebasket floor and leapt against the wall, only to fall back in a sorry heap. He rose, backed off, and tried again. Then he was on the floor of the wastebasket a second time. It was useless, utterly useless. He did not have the strength to tip over the wastebasket. Ralph was not a mouse to give up easily. He considered his problem a moment before he rolled the motorcycle over to the wall of the wastebasket. Then he seized the apple core by the stem and dragged it over to the motorcycle. By putting his shoulder under the stem end, he managed to raise the core until it was standing on its blossom end. But when he put his paw around it and tried to lift it, he found he could not. The core was too heavy to lift onto the seat of the motorcycle. Ralph was disappointed, but when he stopped to think it over, he saw that even if he could manage to get the apple core on top of the motorcycle, it still would not be high enough to allow him to climb out of the wastebasket. Bruised and defeated, Ralph dropped the core and decided he might as well be thrown out with the trash on a full stomach as on an empty one. He took a bite out of the apple and felt a little better. It was the best food he had eaten for several days. Juicy and full of flavor and much better than the Zwieback crumbs the last guests had left behind. He took several more bites and settled down to a hearty meal, saving the seeds for dessert. 2 ant scouts appeared on the rim of the wastebasket. "Go away," said Ralph crossly, because he did not like to eat food crawling with ants, and because it embarrassed him to be seen in such a predicament. The ants left as silently as they had come. When Ralph had eaten his fill of the apple, he curled up beside the core. He only hoped that someone might happen to drop a Kleenex over him. It was bad enough to be carried to one's doom in a wastebasket, but to be carried to one's doom by a shrieking maid was unthinkable. There was one tiny ray of hope. If someone did happen to drop a Kleenex over him, he just might have a chance to jump and run when the maid tipped the basket up into the empty incinerator. The thought that the boy was sure to miss his motorcycle and start looking for it kept Ralph tossing and turning behind the apple core. Stuffed and exhausted, he finally fell asleep. Well, boys and girls, what a predicament Ralph's in, trapped in the bottom of a wastebasket and unable to escape. That is the end of Chapter 3. Check back tomorrow and we will read Chapter 4. Don't forget to press the Turn In button on the bottom of my Google Classroom page so that I know that you've seen this, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think Ralph could do to escape. Maybe he could jump really high. Maybe he could get a better running start. Who knows? Let me know what you think and I will try to reply to everyone's comments. Thanks again for listening, and check back tomorrow for another exciting chapter of The Mouse and the Motorcycle during Mouse Week. Squeak, squeak, squeak!